I'm going to bring in the founder of Democracy Docket, Mark Elias. Mark, so this is how the DOJ, currently led by Todd Blanche, is allegedly operating. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, but I refrained from asking the question, what is the danger to the larger American public of a DOJ, an FBI, and a Secret Service that operates at the whims of a president?
Yeah, so first, I think we have to accept that that is exactly what is happening. This is just the latest example of where we have seen, pretty strong evidence that Donald Trump is controlling, and expecting to direct criminal prosecutions of his political enemies. And so once you accept that as a premise, right, once you accept that, Tish James was not an outlier, James Comey is not an outlier, the going after the Democratic senators and members of Congress, that was not an outlier, right, that this is just the way this administration works, then the dangers, I think, become very self-evident, which is that among the most potent tools that Donald Trump has to abuse his power, to try to make it harder to defeat his party in elections, try to hold his administration accountable, try to speak out on the public airwaves when he does something wrong. Like, the biggest threat there is the weaponization of government. And we've seen that with the FCC towards the broadcasters. We've seen that with the Department of Justice towards political opponents. We've seen that with the White House executive orders targeting law firms. And this Comey thing is just the latest example of that.
Well, and let's talk about Todd Blanche, because he's already facing hurdles to get GOP senators to back his bid for Attorney General. We learned this morning Senator Cornyn called off the meeting he was supposed to have with Blanche today. He's made it clear he just wants it in writing, saying that the so-called anti-weaponization fund is dead. And it is very clear that Blanche does not want to put it in writing. Help us understand why.
I mean, Alicia, isn't that wild? I mean, like literally, Todd Blanche is jeopardizing his possibility of being the Attorney General because he refuses to sign a piece of paper to say that this fund is dead when he has already said in public that this fund is dead. It leads you to the only inescapable conclusion, which is that he is not signing the paper because, in fact, it's not dead. And he wants the ability to tell Donald Trump, after he's been confirmed that, he was crossing his fingers and toes when he said it to the committee and when they said it to the court, and they want to hold out the possibility of bringing this fund back. And it just goes to show not just the depth of the corruption of this administration, because what's at issue here is, taking taxpayer dollars, but also just the absolute sycophantic loyalty that Donald Trump has from people like Todd Blanche.
It's telling to me that you had Senator Grassley telling Senator Cornyn's office, listen, we need to know by 4 o'clock how this thing is going to go. That is less than 3 hours away. And you've watched as Todd Blanche and DOJ have tried to sort of, write these get out of jail free cards. Don't worry, we'll write technical language for legislation. Don't worry, we'll put forward a proposal. I don't know if we should be surprised or not that Cornyn has thus far held the line, but I wonder if you were talking to Senators Cornyn or to Tillis, what would you tell them about any attempt to meet their demand that fell short of putting this in writing?
I mean, this is the thing. When a demand is complicated, you understand why there has to be compromise. When a demand is this simple, right, just literally sign a piece of paper that says that this part of the settlement is null and void. I mean, it's less than 1 page long, what he has to sign. And his inability to do that tells you everything, I would say, to the senators. And I'd say to anyone listening to this, like his unwillingness to do the simple thing and instead try to defer it to something more complicated tells you that he is not going to, that he does not mean it. And what it really tells you is that Donald Trump won't let him do it. It's the same, Alicia, as when we see, federal nominees to the federal bench or to cabinet officials who are asked, who won the 2020 election. And they just can't say Joe Biden. Right? They just can't say the simple thing. They have to do something very complicated. And it's because that's what is demanded of them by Donald Trump.
Right. And you're referencing Jay Clayton there, who just got confirmed. So perhaps that gives us the answer, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so it is, anytime you see someone in that situation take a very simple question or a very simple ask and make it more complicated, that is the tell.
I want to turn to another perceived enemy of Trump's, former CIA Director John Brennan. The Justice Department this week asked a judge to dismiss Brennan's lawsuit against them, separately asked the judge to deny Brennan's bid for preliminary injunction. Brennan, of course, accusing Trump's DOJ of vindictive prosecution against them. All of this, it sounds a little too familiar, Mark.
Yeah, it does, right? I mean, like, this is why I implore everyone, rather than think about these as a one-off here, right? Like, rather than think of this like, well, this is just the Tish James matter, or this is just the James Comey matter, or this is just the Brennan matter, or this is just, the senators who are prosecuted, or this is just, the congresswoman in New Jersey, who, Monica MacGyver, who I don't think gets enough attention paid because she is one of the victims here. Like, rather than thinking these as one-offs, they are just part of a pattern. It is just Donald Trump and his administration deciding to punish his political opponents. So, James Brennan should win this motion, and the court should grant his relief in the same way that all of the rest of them should win their motions and have their relief granted.
Just real quick before we go, I'm just so tickled by this idea of Trump wanting the Senate to cancel their August recess to pass the SAVE Act. Like, he's just going to keep trying. I mean, how many times does he need to hear Senator Thune tell him no?
Well, the remarkable thing is that John Thune's not actually telling him no. John Thune's saying, I don't have the votes. Right? I mean, like, John Thune's not standing there being like, I disagree with this. I mean, John Thune is like, no, I agree with this, but look, Mr. President, there are only 100 senators, so this is not higher math, right? Like we can count from 1 to 100. And the critical numbers here are 51 and 60. And there are not the votes to get there. So, like, Donald Trump can make them stay in session. He can continue to attack John Thune. John Thune is such a weak, pathetic individual. He will take it from Donald Trump, no matter how many things Donald Trump says about him. But what Thune is saying is, Mr. President, I don't have the votes.
Okay, just because you can count to 100, Mark Elias, doesn't mean everybody can. Thank you so much for spending part of the day with us, Mark.